Hello, welcome back. You're watching Sky News Breakfast. With us to review this morning's papers is senior political correspondent at the Daily Express, Christian Calgie, and community editor and columnist at the National, Shona Craven. Thanks so much for joining me again. It's always good to have company in the glass box. Shall we kick off with the Mail? Illegal migrants will overwhelm the UK. This is from Rishi Sunak's speech that he was invited by Giorgia Meloni to Italy. Thoughts, Christian?
Well, he's ramped up the rhetoric once again. He's said that migrants will overwhelm the UK, or illegal migrants rather, and they may destroy democracy. And he also warns that hostile states will drive people to our shores as a weapon, essentially, to undermine and destabilise Western democracies. And I think, this is obviously part of the wider push that Rishi Sunak's been doing, both on illegal migration and legal migration. The problem for the Conservatives is that every time they ramp up the rhetoric, if that isn't matched with policy successes, you just make people angry and then make them more angry with you for not fixing it. And so I don't think that this is going to materialise in a fix to the problem before the next election. But I think the other thing it speaks to is that there is increasingly a change in Europe, and it's not the liberal haven that it was back in 2016. You've got Meloni, you've got Geert Wilders in the Netherlands, you've got the rise of the Alternative for Deutschland in Germany, many other countries. And so possibly, maybe Keir Starmer will be in Britain at the time, but there is theoretically a growing right-wing movement in Europe that Rishi Sunak could work with. I'm just not sure it's entirely possible in the timetable he's got before the election.
Who is he appealing to back here within the party then?
Well, he's trying to find wedge issues with Labour, and Rwanda is one of the, if not the best one he's got. So that's partly it. But as we've seen, Rishi Sunak is on a complete tightrope over this issue. He's got the ERG and the right-wing Tories wanting him to go further. He's got the One Nation Conservatives saying, if you go further, we can no longer support this.
It's really split them.
Oh, the party is completely riven in two, and I struggle to see how they can stay together when they're in opposition. But as I say, the risk is that you ramp up the rhetoric so much that people realise there's a problem, there's a crisis, they get very angry, and then they watch as the government fails to deal with it. And, the Tories are going to be on the receiving end of that anger when that happens.
Indeed. The Sunday Telegraph, Shona, touching on a bit about what Christian was talking about, that the hostile states using migration, and it's a bad thing for the West.
Yeah, well, specifically talking here about illegal migration, but it's very interesting to see Rishi Sunak warning about our countries being overwhelmed and our capacity to help those who need our help most, framing this in a positive way. But I don't think people will have forgotten that just last week he was clamping down on legal migration and reducing our capacity, our health and social care capacity
people,
by blocking people who we actually want from coming. So, if he's reducing the capacity, then who's to blame when that capacity is not met? And in terms of who his audience is for this, well, is it his own colleagues that he's trying to not just make people angry, but make people afraid, make people think this isn't just going to be a problem of cost or capacity, we're going to be under threat. So who's he trying, who's the fear-mongering for? Does he expect individual citizens to go to their MPs and say, are you going to thwart the Rwanda bill? Well, it doesn't necessarily, it's not necessarily in the hands of any of those individuals, but we're reading about this and reading about a rebellion, so it is unclear what the reader of this story is supposed to think is going to happen next. Are people going to be deterred from coming to the UK for fear they'll be sent to Rwanda, when even the right-wing newspapers are highlighting that policy seems unlikely to ever really go ahead?
Well, of course, on the topic of Rwanda, what Rishi Sunak is desperately trying to do is say this as a wedge issue between him and Labour. And there's a great story in the Mail on Sunday today where a Labour candidate in a prime target seat in Bishop Auckland is actually running a travel firm called African Dreams, in which he invites parents to send their kids and teenagers up to Rwanda, which he describes as a safe and supporting environment, which the Tories have absolutely leapt on, because you've got a Labour candidate saying this is a great place for kids to go visit, whilst the leader of the opposition saying it's unsafe for migrants.
Yeah, Yvette Cooper, Shadow Home Secretary, calls it a shameful policy. And also, when you do lead up to that general election, you do wonder how the public are feeling about immigration, legal or not. It's the cost of living crisis, one would think. It's the failing NHS. It's, as we said, crumbling schools, and it's all those issues that we don't seem to be talking about just now.
No, well, they're less wedge issues. So I think the Tories and Labour largely agree on the fact that there's no money to really fix a lot of these things. So that's why migration is so important, and also it's a key issue for those 2019 Tory voters that Rishi Sunak needs to hang on to. So I think that's why it's such a focus.
Fascinating. Shall we move on then? We've got a story here, Christian, in the Sunday Telegraph. The real English accent? Talk to me about this. What is this about?
This is fascinating.
Where the real English accents are.
The rhotic R, which you would associate with the West Country and
Bristol,
pirates and Bristol. Blackburn and Bristol are now the bastions, the last two safe havens of this rhotic R, which English people, which used to be the default for English people and has slowly died out across the country, started off in London and then tailed off in London as people went more for the received pronunciation. And I think this is a really fascinating sociological phenomenon, because these language and pronunciation changes usually happen over an incredibly slow period of time, but what's happened over the last 10, 15, 20 years has been a really rapid acceleration of people dropping accents. Partly the Telegraph suggests through television, social media is also a big thing. I also wonder whether as the economy drives more people to go and work in cities rather than being able to stay in their hometowns for careers, whether people feel like they have to neutralise their accent in order to fit in and have a better career progression.
There's also, worries about the Americanisation of accents. I know my 5-year-old says trash bin for rubbish, which I'm horrified by.
It's a shame. But
that's a load of garbage. But do I have a more English accent than you? Dare I say? I can say bird correctly. I can say poor correctly. There's definitely an R.
Traditional. Yes, I lost my Yorkshire accent quite a while ago.
What a shame.
So, yes, but thankfully, as you say, Peppa Pig is fighting the cause on this and is turning things to America, where American children are starting to say English pronunciations.
I have no words.
Cultural exchange.
Yes, exactly.
I have no words. Shall we talk about panic buying? This is in the Express. And we're all guilty of it, aren't we? Except Shona, perhaps. But this is talking about how people hit the streets to try and get those last-minute deals, Christian, before the big day, essentially.
Yes, exactly. And I will be doing my panic buying possibly this afternoon because I've left it till the last minute, as per usual. It's a story in the Sunday Express that 13 million shoppers are set to blow 1.8 billion on the biggest spending day pre-Christmas. That was apparently yesterday, and 10 million people went to the big shopping areas in Cardiff and Birmingham and the rest. And I think whilst panic buying sounds slightly negative, this is surely a good thing. This is a boost for the high street, and it will also be a temporary reprieve for Jeremy Hunt, given the poor growth figures at the moment. So December will hopefully be a better month than the last.
And Shona here started her Christmas shopping in February, no less.
I do just love buying presents, so I tend to reach December and I go through my box and I've got everything. So there'll be no Stampede Sunday for me, but by the time we've recovered for that, we're going to have Frantic Friday when everyone gets on the road. So as long as you've done your stampeding before you've become frantic. But I think there'll be a frantic atmosphere today, not to scare you, but I think there will be some.
Stay home, I say. Very lastly, we've got 30 seconds. The Daily Star. Most of us will be hiding out in the shed to have a bit of me time on Christmas Day.
Well, I mean, it depends how big your shed, isn't it? I mean, mine's full of Christmas presents for next year. But yeah, I like that they've got, I think this is a character from the Fast show that they've put on the Star. Don't know who they think remembers that. Obviously, I do because of my age. But yeah, I guess if you've panic bought the presents, then maybe you're hiding from your relatives who are a bit disappointed that you've got the bare bones, whatever was left on the shelf, and so you have to go and hide from them because they're disappointed in what they've been given, perhaps.
Oh, I don't know. Christian, Shona, such a pleasure. Thank you so much for your thoughts today in the paper review.